Hello, I'm Sam Mak, Mo Tiancheng. I'm very honored to be invited back to speak at the annual Chinese Biopharmaceutical Association annual conference. I would like very much to be with you in person in China today, but the global public health situation made that impossible, so I can only join you vicariously via cyberspace. I want to thank the president of CBA, Dr. Alex Chi, and my good friend, Dr. Lu Hang, former president, who honored me with this invitation. I want to express my gratitude to some of the former CBA leaders, such as Lu Yang, Dr. Lu Yang, who first introduced me to CBA when this organization was newly created in Washington, D.C. decades ago. Others, such as my dear friend, Dr. Xiaoying Xian, Tony Li Tao, and many other past CBA presidents who expressed faith in me and encouraged my continual affiliation. I have told many of you in the past that I never did well in school with science subjects such as math, biology, chemistry, physics, and computer science. Because I had to work 3 jobs during college, I never had enough time to study, so my grades were ya-ya-woo all the time. I managed to graduate by the skin of my teeth and miraculously somehow got through graduate school. But here I am, given the opportunity to stand before all you PhDs and top students in top universities in China and around the world, with your expertise in subjects that almost caused me nervous breakdowns while I was in college. Only in America this is possible. For that, I'm very glad to be an American with my Chinese heritage. Talking about America and China, all of us in this forum have vested interest in seeing the two countries get along in a more positive environment and work together more productively for mutual benefit. Today, I'd like to share with you my personal views, the current state of U.S.-China relationship, and where the relationship may head for the remaining time of the Biden-Harris administration. While the U.S. and China had a relationship over 2+ centuries in the past, U.S., it's important to remember that U.S. and the People's Republic of China only enjoy friendship and mutual trade for about 70 years. During these 7 decades, while there were periods of honeymoon, the military of two countries fought kinetic and economic trade wars, imposed sanctions on each other, crossed swords diplomatically in the United Nations, as well as persecuted citizens of the other countries. Many are very disappointed and disheartened by the current state of U.S.-China relationship. Those of you in the biopharma industry have more burdens to carry because of many allegations and hostility exhibited by some of the Fortress America U.S. nationals with isolationist tendencies. The current anti-Asian hate crime supposedly stirred up by extremists in America is not a new phenomenon. During the early days of this country, United States of America, the Know Nothing Party, the American Workers' Party, and the Chinese Exclusion Act seem not far too different from the battle cries and policies promoted by some recently defeated elected or appointed official, including one that many call Individual Number 1. To understand why there is a current sentiment about China and ethnic Chinese in America, we need to revisit history. The Chinese Exclusion Act was passed in the United States in the early to mid-1800s. All ethnic Chinese in America are subject to extremely hostile discrimination and persecution. Nothing like this was ever done to another ethnic group except the internment of Japanese. But this Chinese Exclusion Act lasted almost 100 years. It was not repealed until the Second World War ending because China is an ally. So many Chinese born in America were not given citizenship. Many Chinese were forced to return to China, deported back to China. Many sad stories are written. Their experience at Treasure Island, Angel Islands. For those of you who are not familiar with this, you really should go and study those subjects. And then we talk about fake news. Many people thought it's a recent phenomenon But depending on your definition of fake news, this is nothing new. During the Second World War, Henry Luce created the Time magazine. He was a big, or before Second World War in the 30s, Henry Luce was a big supporter of the KMT and Generalissimo Chiang Kai-shek. So the coverage about what's going on in China was all loop-sided, pro-KMT, pro-Chiang Kai-shek, and there was a basically smear campaign about the Mao Zedong revolution. Despite the good reporting by Edgar Snow and John Service and many others who saw what happened and wanted to report honestly, but they too were pushed aside. So the whole fake news phenomena is not something new. So when you have the Chinese Exclusion Act as a backdrop, you have the like of Henry Luce promoting a one-sided story. And that eventually led to Korean War. Many old veterans that are still alive today, some of them served until recently at very high positions in the US government, have personally witnessed the land war in Korea, on the Korea Peninsula, had saw the horror or was so traumatic experience of the Chinese human wave attack that to this day, there's still tremendous fear of subconsciously about China, its military, and some would call the yellow peril. And then fast forward to Vietnam War. This is one country that we fought, tried to preserve freedom in Southeast Asia. And the theory is if Vietnam falls, the entire Southeast Asia will become communist countries. So we went to war and 50,000 Americans died there. The war taught the American military another experience, the invisible enemy, through guerrilla warfare. So in the last two land wars that the United States was involved in, that China had a part, or the Chinese played a part, US did not come out very well. So there has been a lot of fear and anxiety under the current in this country. And then we have the so-called trade war. It's not a kinetic war, but economic competition in a very hostile sense. So the trade war has been going on for the last 4 or 5 years, but the actual technology competition has already been going on for maybe decades since China entered the WTO. A group of very senior US government officials or former US government officials wrote a very good article, op-ed piece on the Wall Street Journal. The title said, "Winner of the trade war does not include us, United States of America." I think that was one of the most insightful articles I have read. If you have not read that, I suggest that you should look it up and read it. The trade war itself is a political, campaign, in my opinion, and shared by many. United States did not benefit from the trade war. United States have not been able to bring China to its goals of the United States in terms of concession. So these are the things that have been going on. If you look back, the two land wars and the economic competition struggle, trade war, the United States did not come out very well in all of them. And many felt China is behind all these. So there has been a backdrop of hostility, anger, frustration about China. With China doing very well economically and United States still struggling to recover economically, there is a lot of maybe jealousy, maybe concern that one day China may replace America as the world's superpower. That is the big backdrop in terms of political climate. Then let's talk about a cultural climate. America is a country of immigrants. In the early days, the Anglo-Saxon came from England. America used to be a British English colony. So the English came over here. Eventually, the Irish came over here during the potato famine. But the Irish were very poor peasants, so the Anglo-Saxons looked down upon them. Eventually, the Irish moved up the immigration ladder, joined the Anglo-Saxons. They, in turn, looked down at the German immigrants. The German immigrants looked down at the Greek immigrants, the Italian immigrants, and when they all got assimilated into mainstream America, They look down at the newer immigrants or other ethnic groups such as Jewish Americans and later the Asian Americans. The Jewish Americans, basically the anti-Semitic feeling has been very high until about 20 or 30 years ago. Still evident in many segments of the society. The big difference between European immigrants and immigrants from Asia is skin color. A Greek, Italian, German, Irish, Polish immigrant came to America, learned English, changed his name to Smith, Brown, or Jones. Nobody could tell the difference where they're from. Asian immigrants, regardless how you change your name, try to anglicize. The skin color cannot be changed. So the melting pot theory of immigration in America does not work for people of color. So that became a big problem. The African Americans are not technically immigrants. They were brought here against their wishes. So I don't consider them immigrants. They have a very sad history of being suppressed, exploited, but that's a total different story. So what happened is, if you look at the cultural treatment of new immigrants or new Americans coming in, you will see that basically all the newcomers were subject to a lot of hostility. So some Chinese friends ask me, this is very strange because America is supposed to be a very tolerant society. Why is this happening? My answer is, America is like the traditional fraternity in college or sorority. When you come in, there's a period of hazing. This is not a policy, but that's almost like a tradition. So when you must be hazed, and say, if you withstand all the hazing, you get to join the fraternity or sorority. You're one of us. So there's a tradition of mistreating, looking down, and treating the newcomers very badly. The good news is, if you look at all those other groups who came in before, they all done very well after they went through that period. I too believe that Chinese Americans, Asian Americans, will come out well. One day there'll be an American president of Asian American descent or Chinese American descent. So therefore, culturally, the Americans have a very different way of treating newcomers. And that is added to the layer of the hostility towards newcomers, what we talked about. On top of that, the newcomers from Asia have very different way of life, very different religious beliefs. Because whether you're Polish, Greek, Italian, German, French, you're either Protestant or Catholic. They are very similar. People understand each other, although there are minor differences. But Buddhism, Muslim, and all the other East Asian or Southeast Asian religions are so radically different from European tradition. Fear of the unknown strive more fear. As President Truman said famously, the biggest thing to fear is fear itself. Because of ignorance and misinformation, many newcomers were treated very badly on top of cultural and other reasons. On top of all that I just discussed, there is something called a browning of America. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, in 10 to 15 years, the white European Americans will become a minority in this country. It's called a browning of America. America will be predominantly Asian descent, Hispanic descent, and African American. So many European white Americans became very concerned for legitimate reasons. I totally understand that. I don't agree with the concern, but I fully understand. This is the country founded by their forefathers with a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. And if you watch movies about the frontier days, those were really hard days. And they built this country to what it is today. So what happened is many new immigrants came in. They were not economic refugees like in the past. They were very wealthy people coming here for investment, for political reasons, and for many other reasons. So they lived very well. They bought houses, big cars, and drove the economy itself. But it also caused jealousy. So the browning of America in terms of voting, in terms of lifestyle, many whites felt threatened. So what you're witnessing in the last election cycle Some will consider that as the battle cry for a transition in America. So all this added together, and when Chinese American always try to emphasize the cultural heritage to be remembered, what I call a children of yellow emperor problem or issues, it created many, many concern by Americans. So Asian Americans in America, Chinese Americans in particular, has many, many challenges in this country, but it's also up to us to go and help the Biden-Harris administration to be successful. The reason I say this, I'm a Republican Party member. I truly believe President Biden is a very decent gentleman, not like some other elected officials. The people around him are all very decent, patriotic Americans who want to do good for America. I believe their policy and their methods will be a lot more successful than some other method tried before. And I also believe they have the true intention of trying to work with everybody. So we want to see them successful, because if they fail, then some of the things that we saw in the past few years will all come back. And if that happens, many, many in America will suffer more, and it's not a good thing for America nor for the world. So where would the Biden administration be going? Well, they have already passed the 100 days. Now they're in the second 100 days. It is generally believed that they are very successful in the first 100 days in putting a clamp and contain the virus. Now America is coming back to somewhat normalcy. Everybody got their vaccine, so that's a big kudos. And the economic recovery will help that. The important thing is, after this, there are a lot of internal issues America needs to deal with that the slim margin in Congress may or may not be able to deliver for the Biden administration. So what happened is 2022 election is going to be very telling. If the Democrat maintain control of Congress, then there will be likely a very successful remaining Biden-Harris administration. If they lose control of Congress, the Biden-Harris administration may become a lame duck administration, because the Republican Party is going to be very, very hell-bent in making sure Biden and Harris are not successful. There may be a comeback of Donald Trump. Hard to believe, but it's very possible. What does that mean for U.S.-China relationship? I think right now Harris team is very focused on dealing with domestic issues, which is the correct way to execute. The foreign affairs, particularly China policy, is not being ignored, but it's not the top priority. Unless there are event forcing action, it will just percolate along. If you look at the State Department China team, there are still a lot of vacant positions. The good news is some of the old, I call China hand, who have a very good head on their shoulder, are all back, such as Kurt Campbell's and others. There have been some very good Obama people at State Department that are now part of the Biden administration. Secretary Blinken is a far cry from the former Secretary of State. I think he will do a great job. I think he will be very level-headed. I think it will be a welcome change. I believe he will rebuild State Department to its height, to where it should be in terms of diplomacy is the solution to most problems, not militarily. So I am very optimistic about what's going on for the next 100 days. I am also very optimistic about the U.S.-China relationship, because the old saying, what goes up must come down. Right now, we're at the valley. If you look back at the 70 years relationship, the two countries' relationship has been up and down, up and down. Ambassador Li Daoyu, before he left, said something very insightful. He said, every time when U.S.-China relationship is very good, I lose sleep because something bad is going to happen and will cause headache for everybody. He said, when U.S.-China relationship is very bad, one way to look at it is there's only one way to go, it's up. Right now, I think we're at a valley. So I am optimistic about the future. I just hope there will be no unforeseen action-forcing events that derail the relationship. In the meantime, all of us should go out and do our part to help Americans understand the importance of a balanced, positive, and productive U.S.-China relationship. CBA has a very important bridge. You are in an industry that's critical to both countries. So I hope every one of you will do your part and help to promote, enhance, and push forward the U.S.-China relationship. You have a role as the rudder and the propeller to push this good ship forward in these stormy seas so that we will sail to calm waters in the near future. Thank you very much, and I hope in the future I have a chance to be with you in person. Thank you.